کہ میرے لیے یہ جرنی کیا تھی اور میرے ساتھ کیا ہوا. اس سے آپ لوگوں کو ابھی بھی کئی خواتین 3-4 خواتین ابھی بھی جیل کے اندر ہیں. اور
السلام علیکم ناظرین. مشہور ماڈل خدیجہ شاہ کے آج جمعہ کے دن ہولناک انکشاف. جیل میں قید کے دوران ان کے ساتھ کیا کچھ ہوا آج خدیجہ شاہ نے سب کے سامنے ساری حقیقت کھول کر رکھ دی. آئیے پہلے یہ ویڈیو دیکھیں پھر اس پر تفصیل سے بات کرتے ہیں.
کافی باتیں تو شہباز کھوسہ صاحب کر چکے ہیں لیگل میٹرز کے اوپر، کیسز کے اوپر، اور علیمہ خان نے آپ کو خان صاحب کے پیغامات دے دیے اور ان کی اپڈیٹس دے دی، اور پرزنرز اور ان کی جو ریہیبلیٹیشن کا کام جاری ہے اس کے بارے میں بھی انہوں نے کافی کچھ بتا دیا. آئی تھنک کہ میں آپ کو ایز اے پرزنر تھوڑا سا آج اپنے پرسنل ایکسپیرینس کے بارے میں بات کروں گی کہ میرے لیے یہ جرنی کیا تھی اور میرے ساتھ کیا ہوا. اس سے آپ لوگوں کو ابھی بھی کئی خواتین 3-4 خواتین ابھی بھی جیل کے اندر ہیں. اور obviously there were around 74 women who went to prison to Kot Lakhpat jail, and mashallah سے all of them are out now on bail. اور لیکن ابھی بھی ہم لوگ سارے جیل ٹرائلز کا سامنا کر رہے ہیں. بٹ میں آپ کو تھوڑا سا اپنے پرسنل ایکسپیرینسز کے بارے میں آج بتاؤں گی. میں نے کچھ لکھا ہوا تھا اینڈ آئی تھنک کیونکہ اب وی ہیو سort of shortage of time, so I will, rather than speaking sort of extempo, I will just read it out to you. I would like to thank you for inviting me to speak today, first and foremost. I am Khadijah Shah, a Pakistani and American dual citizen. I have built a life in my motherland, Pakistan, and I am an entrepreneur. I own and head 2 fashion brands and have represented Pakistan globally. My the subversion of our constitution and the derailment of democracy as an ordinary citizen of Pakistan. Over the next few days, I started receiving phone calls that I was in danger and should leave home. I was shocked and in disbelief. I had done nothing illegal. Why was I in danger? There was news of raids on the houses of people who had attended the protest, and my name was on a list. I had to leave home with my daughter. A few days later, armed men raided my parents' house in Kant and abducted my father, husband, and my brother. My father, who had a history of service to the country, is a diabetic and needs his medicine in the early hours. He was not allowed the courtesy of even taking his medication. My husband was beaten. He was tasered and his eardrum was permanently damaged. They had come to get me. My sister sent me a video of the raid and asked me to leave my friend's house immediately. They had our drivers and our household staff. It was only a matter of time before they would get to me. I left my 5-year-old daughter sleeping. I would see her face again after 2 months. The next few days, I went from house to house. Whoever would be kind enough to give me refuge. I stayed in empty homes and took public transport. Our family was scattered all over the city, communicating with each other without revealing locations. I was completely alone. After a week, we decided that I would surrender myself to the authorities. My face was being flashed all over media as a PTI leader and the mastermind of the May 9th protest. A narrative was being drummed up, painting me as an absconder on the run. False news of my arrest would be broken, placing me at locations I had never been to. I would see all this on TV and social media. Certain journalists were tasked to spread the same narrative on social media, and certain accounts were calling for my rape by the police and skinning me alive. It was the most terrifying thing to see about yourself, and it was being done without an iota of proof being given against me. They wrote and said whatever they wanted to pin on me with such conviction, and no one questioned where the proof was. This was my first personal experience of complete lawlessness that had engulfed our country and would swallow it up in the months to come. My husband was still in jail without any charges, and they refused to let him go till I handed myself over. My family was shattered and scattered. My friends' homes were being raided. Their staff was getting beaten and brutalized. I decided to surrender. I still believed against my instinct that because I was innocent and there was no proof, the courts of justice would release me. As I drove in a rickshaw to the CCPO office, every instinct of mine told me the grave danger I was in. There were several points at which I thought, just stop, get out of this vehicle and run far away. Those tweets of propaganda and political accounts asking for my rape and skinning me alive flashed in my head. I just told myself, whatever would happen, Allah would give me the courage to bear it. I numbed my mind as I would 7 months later on the journey to Balochistan. I surrendered, and I was thrown into a dirty cell in Lytton police station with street criminals. The next morning, I was presented like a terrorist with a black shroud over my head at the ATC, and the judge sent me to KL jail, Lahore. That's Kotlakpat jail. I would remain there for the next 7 months. In these 7 months, I saw our judicial system exposed to its rotten core. There was no law, no process, and no justice. After hundreds of hearings, adjournment after adjournment, eventual denial of bails from the ATC, and 5 different cases leveled against me, I finally got bail from the High Court, and I was subsequently detained under an NPO. An NPO is an archaic colonial times ordinance which was used against the local populations to restrict them from demanding independence. As my NPO neared its completion, I was whisked off to Balochistan through the back door of Kotlakpat jail, as my family waited at the High Court for my release after 7 long months of imprisonment. The order for me to be taken to Balochistan was sanctioned by an ATC judge. There was no consideration of the merit of this ludicrous demand. No consideration that I was a woman who had already suffered illegal incarceration for 7 months without proof or conviction. No consideration of what would happen to me and where they would be taking me. I was put in a Vigo with heavy police contingents and driven to Balochistan on an 18-hour-long journey on the most dangerous route in Pakistan. A route where there are almost daily attacks on police and law enforcement agencies. My life and the lives of those tasked to take me were put on stake, as if we were animals and mere statistics. I was kept in a basement in a detention center in Balochistan. I was in police remand for 17 days. The charge against me was leading and instigating the protests in Balochistan. The Honorable Judge of the Balochistan High Court, like all sane individuals, found this to be laughable. The police, even after 17 days, were unable to produce any credible evidence against me. I was finally released on the 27th of December and headed back with my family to Lahore. Up until 9th May, I had led a life of privilege. I never had a brush with law or the legal system. I was outspoken on political matters as a student of politics and a concerned citizen. But I had no idea about the extent of our institutional and systemic deformity. I was brought up by my grandfather, the former chief of the army, and I had seen the leadership of the political parties closely. It is alarming that those same politicians who would flock to my grandfather asking for his intervention and support to bring them into power are still dominating the political landscape 30 years.
नाज़रीन कराम, जैसा कि खदीजा शाह को 9 मई जलाओ गिराओ केस में नामजद करने के बाद कई माह तक जेल में कैद रखा गया। इस दौरान इनके साथ क्या कुछ हुआ, आप ये हकीकत खदीजा शाह की ज़बानी सुन चुके हैं। मशहूर मॉडल खदीजा शाह को तहरीक-ए-इंसाफ की सपोर्ट करने पर इस मुश्किल मरहले का सामना करना पड़ा। इसमें न सिर्फ ये खातून शामिल थी बल्कि सनम जावेद, तैयबा राजा वगैरह भी शामिल हैं। खवातीन में सबसे ज्यादा परेशानी का सामना सनम जावेद को दरकार हुआ, जिन्हें रिहाई के बाद कई बार गिरफ्तार किया गया, लेकिन खदीजा शाह ने भी मुश्किल मरहला गुजारा, जिसका जिक्र आज करते हुए ये अबदीदा नजर आई। लिहाजा आप नाज़रीन की इनकी गुफ्तगू के हवाले से क्या राय है, कमेंट सेक्शन में अपनी राय का इज़हार ज़रूर करें।